All right. Welcome to the Rise Up podcast. I'm your host, Jonah Mitchell, and on this show, I do my best to help simplify everything that goes into losing weight, improving body composition, improving your health overall, and really just help you get out of your own way to accomplish the goals that you want to, and allow them to last for your life instead of this on again, off again roller coaster that so many people find themselves in. And if you're a longtime listener, thank you so much for tuning back in. If you're a brand new listener, I hope you find this helpful. And, I wanted to jump right in and start talking about how to stay consistent when life gets in the way. Because one of the most difficult things people find in their lives is that being consistent is really hard when holidays, birthdays, celebrations, whatever distraction pops up. We're just ending Christmas and the most busy seasons of the year, and it's been pretty busy. If you are listening to my show on a weekly basis, I've been gone for 3 weeks, so it's been really busy on my end too. And I did not do the proper preparation to make sure that I had podcasts, I had content ready to push out while I was traveling for the holidays. So I'm here now, and same thing that that I'm struggling with creating podcast episodes, and even with my own fitness and health journey. I want to help you understand that consistency during the holiday season, during whatever season that's not ideal, because a lot of us understand that there's really no ideal time for our goals. There's always something coming up. There's always some new thing that's going to pull us in a different direction. That's going to make us feel like we don't have enough time for ourselves. If we don't learn how to navigate and accommodate for those situations, we'll never feel like we can be consistent. We'll never feel like we can make time for ourselves, and we'll eventually feel like our goals just aren't worth it. Like it's not possible, and that's not the case here, right? You deserve to have your results. You don't deserve to just accept your misery by not having the time, by not having the focus or the energy to do everything that you think you're supposed to do. And if you've been like I always say, or usually say, this process is a lot harder, or we make this process a lot harder than it needs to be. And when it comes to finding consistency with no matter what, when life is busy, with everything going on, especially during the season, it's all about understanding expectations of yourself, right? The only ever time we're ever met with disappointment is if we have unmet expectations. If we expect consistency to be perfect, well, we're in for a world of hurt. Because a lot of us, and I'm sure if you listen to this, if you're listening to this now and you struggled finding that consistency, you think everything has to go right for you to see results. Everything has to be perfect. But that's furthest from the truth. And if you have friends, kids, loved ones in general, if they had the idea that to make progress in an area of their life, they had to do everything perfectly, they had to pass every class perfectly when they were in school, they had to get every work assignment perfectly to keep their job, they had to get every how would I say this for they have to do everything perfectly for their spouse to stay in their relationship, right? Would any of that be true? Right? Are we really not going to allow any mistakes for the people that we care about? We wouldn't. We wouldn't. And I do this all the time with my clients who have children who think that they always just need to be better, better, better. And good enough is never good enough. It has to be perfect or it's not, it doesn't matter at all. If you held that same standard for the friends and family and your children, right, their lives would be incredibly difficult. They would not ever feel good enough. And you don't want that for them. You don't. You wouldn't. But for some reason, you won't look at yourself the same way. And there's the reason for that many people aren't aware of or don't fully understand is we live in our body, we live in our heads. We've been through hard times and we've come out on the other side. We know what we can deal with. We know what we're capable of. And if we aren't upholding, like I should be, if we're not upholding this Superman, Superwoman fallacy that I should be able to do everything and be able to make time for myself, and like if we constantly put that pressure on us, like that Superman, Superwoman fallacy, whatever it is, tears us down from the inside. So now we're looking at ourselves like, well, I can't do it all, so I might as well not even try. So when Christmas rolls around and your routine is completely out of whack, you are driving all over the place, you are eating foods that are not in your normal routine, well, why am I even trying? What's the point? I already messed up. I might as well keep messing up. That mentality is why you'll never find consistency, and when you never find consistency, you'll never find results. The only way to see results is to be consistent. And you oftentimes are consistently inconsistent because of this relationship you have with yourself. So how do we change this relationship? How do we establish a routine of consistency even when there's a lot of things in our life that we do not control? Well, every time I have a client who's an all or nothing person, who thinks everything has to be perfect to fit back in their clothes, to to see results, to see the number on the scale go down, to stop feeling unhappy, to stop hating their body, we have to prove that part of us that thinks we have to be perfect wrong. We have to prove it wrong. And I like to give my clients a simple way to start this. And I've talked about this before, but it hasn't been a while. It's been a while. But essentially, there's two people in our mind driving the bus all the time. There's the version of us, the survival version of us that gets stressed, emotional, frustrated, and makes irrational decisions, unaligned decisions. Right. This is where you're stressed, emotional, and there's the desserts in front of you, and you have three servings instead of one, and then you immediately feel regret afterwards, and you feel like you crossed a line with yourself, and you're just so shamed and guilty about the decision you made, right? But in the moment, you weren't thinking about that. All you wanted was the thing, or you were thinking about it and you were constantly aware of the guilt and frustration that you were feeling while you're eating, but you still did it anyway. That's the survival you that shows up to keep you protected. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm using air quotes because that part of us is the reason why we don't have self control and why we can't find consistency, because we've practiced that behavior so much. We've been so uncomfortable that our body finds a way to give ourselves any form of relief through food, through alcohol, through whatever it is that you feel like, oh, I messed up. I might as well just keep the ball rolling and keep messing up moving forward. That survival version of you is trying to help you, is trying to make you feel better, but it can't think it can't think beyond the present moment. It can't think of how it's going to feel afterwards. And that's a tough thing to explain to people when we're going through this. Like our body, our mind hates stress. It hates feeling uncomfortable. And any form of relief, it appreciates so much. It does so much to reduce that stress, that cortisol response, because overproduction of cortisol is very detrimental for our body. So our body fights every turn when we have stress from our lives, from our emotions, from everything. It does everything it can to mitigate the overproduction of stress, usually and that's usually done through misaligned decisions when you turn to food and you feel like you've messed up, right? So that survival version of you is in the driver's seat when you do things that are misaligned with your health goals that make it easier for you to be inconsistent. The person that you want to be, the real you, right? The real you that you want to be, the thriving you, that's the voice that gets silenced, that gets put in the corner. And when you feel guilt, shame, or frustrated, that version of you is what's causing those emotions. Because the survival you made you do something that doesn't align with you, didn't actually help you feel better. You may have felt better for the moment while it was happening, but as the second is done, you're left with the emotions of guilt, shame, and frustration, right? So now expectation of being perfect is literally impossible. So now we have what you think is going to help you see results through a tough times. I'm just going to be perfect in the set, and if I'm not, it doesn't even matter why I even try. That's all misaligned choices, because even when you get to a part, or even when you get to your goals, when it comes to your physical health, you're still going to have holidays. You're still going to have celebration that you're going to have to navigate. And if you don't learn how to make aligned decisions, to stop letting that survival version of you that makes decisions without thinking, if we don't learn how to catch that and make a slightly better decision, you're never gonna sustain the results that you create. It's only a matter of time. And a lot of people, when I describe this to them, they feel like it's going to take forever for them to get to the results because they're not doing everything right all the time. But if you do everything right, you see results, but it's unsustainable and you lose the results, that really makes it take a lot longer to get to your results, sustain your results. Because the problem most people have isn't just losing weight, it's keeping the weight off. You know, like if we all just lost weight and we all just happy hunky dory, like me and many of my colleagues would not have jobs. But this is why the weight comes back, because you don't learn how to do this first, how to find consistency, and find consistency in the chaos of your life, and learn that you can show up a little bit better. Remind yourself that you're not completely like way out in left field by making by having one or two slip ups, and you can just keep the momentum going by controlling what you can control, leaving everything else, letting everything else go. It's like, oh, that wasn't perfect. Okay, did I do my best? I did my best. Move on. What's the next opportunity? To remind myself, hey, I'm okay. I'm okay. How can I tell that survival me that's trying to make me make decisions to shut the hell up and allow me to make decisions that are actually going to make me feel better in the long run? So we first start by identifying survival you versus thriving you, right? And I like to have my clients give their survival them a name, right? My negative voice, my over perfective voice, her name is Tiny Tina. And it may sound weird, but it makes it very easy for me to identify when I'm being very critical, negative, or holding an unmet or an unfulfillable expectation over myself. It makes it very easy for me to identify that voice in my head and say, oh, that's not really me. That's Tiny Tina throwing a tantrum in my brain, right? And the real me, Jonah, the person I want to be, the one that wants to go into a holiday situation, enjoy himself without crossing a line, without feeling guilty or shamed or feeling like I have messed up all of my progress. That's the voice I want to hear. That's the consistency in the chaos version I want to be, right? So we name the voice, and we identify when the voice is coming, it pops into our head and says, you need to be perfect. You need to completely avoid all the bad stuff this holiday season. And if you don't, you're a failure. Why even try? Give up, wait until January 1st, and you'll start over again, right? That's not how you want to live your life. That's the same pattern you found yourself in that's kept you stuck. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And doing something different, doing a different diet, doing a different workout program is not doing something different. It's still the same. A lot of it's still the same philosophies that you have to follow this plan to a T in order to see results with no wiggle room on how to live your life. And that's not what people want. That's not what you want. You want to live your life and sustain your goals at the same time. This is why you're not finding that consistency, right? Or finding that consistency that allows you to feel like you're still making progress in all the directions, not just on the scale, but creating control in your life and proof that you can do both, that you can be happy and healthy and sustain your goals for the long run. So after we identify that voice, that negative voice in your head, right now we catch it and say, I see you holding an unfulfillable expectation, and I don't want to go down the same path of an unmet expectation that will make me feel guilty, ashamed, or frustrated. So instead of saying I need to be perfect throughout this holiday season, because that's not possible, I'm going to be way out of my routine, I'm going to be traveling, what can I focus on, what can I accomplish, instead of what can't I? Because now we take the power away from that survival you, from my Tiny Tina. I see what she's doing. I see the unmet expectations she's setting up for me to guarantee that I fail so she stays in the driver's seat. If I catch her and I identify what she's trying to accomplish, and I say, great, what you're focusing on is only going to lead me down that path of guilt, shame, or frustration. So instead of doing that same pattern over and over again, I'm going to catch myself. I'm going to think, how do I want to feel during the holiday season? How do I want to feel after the holiday season? Do I want to feel frustrated, like I let myself down, like I wasn't perfect and I should just give up for the rest of the year? No. I want to feel like I was able to enjoy myself appropriately. And even if the scale isn't where I want it to be afterwards, I know when I go back to my routine, all the pieces fall back to where I want them to be. When I'm hitting my step counts, when I'm going to the gym, my 2 to 3 times a week, when I'm eating my food 80% of the time, I know I feel better and I like the way that I feel. And if I can't do all those things, maybe I can focus on one or two aspects of that routine to help hold me over through the holiday season so that I don't feel like I'm completely like I'm completely off the wagon. There we go. And like I fail and let myself down. Instead of trying to do all of my routine, maybe I'm going to focus on just getting as much protein as I can. Right. This is exactly what I did when I was in Florida with my grandparents. My grandmother loves cooking. Like that woman was in the kitchen basically 90% of the 7 days that me and my family were out there with her. It was like to the point where the last like day and a half we had to say like, Bobby, sit down. And we call my grandmother Bobby, but we said, sit down, you relax. There's enough food for all of us to eat for another 3 weeks. Like you don't need to be cooking anything at all. And, my grandmother doesn't know what a calorie is. She has no idea what a calorie is. So I have to keep in mind, I don't want to sit here and tell her, oh, I can't have that, Bobby. I can't eat that. There's too much butter in there. It's like, no, I enjoy my grandmother's cooking, but there's a lot more calories in there than if I were cooking these things. That doesn't mean I can't enjoy the food. It doesn't mean I can't have it. I just have to accept, hey, there's certain aspects I can't control of this. I'm not going to tell my grandmother how she should cook her food. I'm going to enjoy it to the best of my ability. I'm going to prioritize the leanest protein option I have. I'm going to make sure I have at least one color, a vegetable or a fruit with my foods, because those things are going to help me feel satisfied quicker. And that may make it easier may make it a little bit more difficult for me to overconsume food and feel like I'm way off base and actively going against my goals, right? Even though technically eating a little bit more calories through the holiday season isn't with my maintenance goals for me, or if I had weight loss goals, if I'm eating more calories than I usually am, then that could be technically going against my weight loss goals, but I'm not there cooking the food. I'm not there controlling everything the way that I control when I'm at home. So I have to adjust my perspective. I have to focus on what I can control instead of throw my hands up and say, great, well, this holiday season's ruined again, right? Bobby's cooking all these foods. I can't do anything about it. So I might as well just stuff my face and just worry about it when I get home, and I'll start again on Monday when the new year starts. That doesn't help anybody. That resignation of, oh, well, throw consistency out the window doesn't, it's the same pattern. So that's my Tiny Tina talking. That's your little voice or your Tiny Tina, whatever that is, that survival you saying you can't control this, so you might as well not even try. Cool, I see you, Tiny Tina. So I'm going to focus on my protein, my color to the best of my ability, and that's all I'm going to worry about. If I do those things, I have no reason to tear myself down, to beat myself up. Tiny Tina has no reason to come up and say I failed, because I clearly defined what I can control, and that's what I chose to focus on. That's why I tried to prioritize to the best of my ability, and when I do that, I remove the guilt, the shame, and frustration, because I take the pressure off. I make a clear line that I can control, and that takes the power away from Tiny Tina, and that makes the real me, the true me, the thriving me. It makes that voice louder. So now I can maintain the momentum that I had before the holiday season, when things were a little bit less crazy. I was in my routine. I was staying consistent with my movement and my food choices. And say, well, if I can't do everything right, I'm going to pick at least one or two things, right? That's just the food aspect. Another boundary that I wanted to practice was, okay, if I don't have access to a gym, I'm at least going to work out or move in any capacity for at least 20 or 30 minutes a day. Because I can control that. I can get away from my family for at least 20, 30 minutes by myself. If it's in a gym, that's great. If it's just walking in the neighborhood, that's great too, but it's something to keep the momentum going that may not be as ideal as I think it's supposed to be, as I thought it was supposed to be. It's not perfect, it's not pretty, but it's something. And this is where you find that consistency during the holidays, during anything in your life. This is why you're not consistent when the holidays come around, because you refuse to find what you can control. You're too busy focusing on what you can't control, and that's not really you. That's the survival side of you. And I don't want this to, I bring this up with a lot of clients, and they bring up, like, when I ask them to name it, they're like, bitch or little asshole or whatever, that's totally fine. Like that side of us makes it harder for us to show up harder for us to find consistency in busy times of our lives. But we all do something for a reason. And everything that we do, regardless of what it looks like, okay, for the vast majority of things that we do, when it comes to not harming other people, but everything that we do is trying to help us, even if it's misaligned with what we say we want, right? That part of us is trying to help us for some reason, and you may not be aware when or why it started happening. But if you are someone who turns to food when they're stressed, frustrated, or fearful, whatever, or if you're the all or nothing person, it's like, oh well, why even try? I'm just going to give up. That part of you was developed through other experiences in your life, that it's trying to mitigate the impact. It's trying to protect you from the disappointment, from the guilt, from the frustration. It's trying to distract you, right? But it doesn't know that the help that it's trying to provide is harmful. It can't. It's a very irrational side of our brain. We have to be the adult. We have to be the parent to ourselves to say that behavior isn't acceptable. It's not going to help. It's not going to make me feel any better. It's only going to cause more harm than good. And this takes practice. This is not something that you do overnight. Like I tell my clients when we're really working on this, like the first step is when we're aware of these patterns and we're having this conversation with our survival side of us and our thriving side of us, like it's going to take practice for you to keep catching that survival version of you. It's not going to go away just because you see it, because we've practiced it so much. Once you see it, it's going to try and hide from you. It's going to try and push you back into those patterns, those behaviors, without you even being aware of it. And then that's even more frustrating, because you're like, oh, now I'm aware of it. Now I understand it. Why am I still doing it? Well, because you have probably a lifetime of practicing those behaviors, of that relationship with yourself in your head. And you probably only have a few weeks to a few months of just being aware of that pattern. So now, to improve your consistency throughout the season, we have to practice this relationship with ourselves and learn to speak to ourselves rationally. The crazy people are the ones who don't talk to themselves rationally. You're talking to yourself. A lot of people talk to themselves and they're very self-critical and pretty much just their worst asshole to themselves they possibly can be. But it's very irrational because they don't actually think about what they're saying. They just, because they think it's true. And then they put all this pressure on themselves to fulfill unfulfillable expectations. And when they have unmet expectations, this is where the spiral starts. And now they're inconsistent. Now, when they're inconsistent, it's even harder for them to see goals. And it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't. But this is how you start to develop that consistency. You got to let go. To simplify all of this stuff, right? Let go of what you can't control. Let it go. It doesn't help you to say, I could have done better. I should have done better. You didn't. Move on. Stop it. Once you let go, what's the next step you can do? What's the next logical step you can do to make your life a little bit better when it comes to getting to your goals? There's so many ways to do this. It could be with your movement. Can you go move for 5 minutes? Can you prioritize at least one vegetable or one protein or one fruit in your diet? Can you, it just has to be something in the right direction. And when you do something in the right direction, something can get better, as opposed to doing nothing at all, which nothing guarantees there's no progress that will be made, there's no consistency that will be had, and you will continue to stay stuck. This is a miserable, miserable life that most people are stuck in because they don't realize how mental, how emotional this is. Yes, we all know better, but the reason we don't do better, even though we know better, is because we don't take the time to actually address the real problem. We're too busy trying to distract ourselves with the next diet, with the next workout program, with the next thing that's just going to be the magic pill for all our results. But the real problem with your consistency, no matter what time of year, is you. Not because you want to, but the part of you that you haven't addressed. That survival you that you've let go run rampant, and drive the bus of your life, making decisions that lead to you feeling guilty, ashamed, or frustrated, that make it hard for you to find consistency in any aspect whatsoever. You can be consistent for about 3 weeks and then the motivation's gone. And it's like, oh, I'm just going to go back to my old pattern. That's not you. That's the survival you. That's used to you being inconsistent, consistently inconsistent. That's why I want you to name it. Because I want to make it easier for you to identify those patterns. When you see the pattern more often, pattern recognition leads to, oh, this is going to happen again. I don't want this to happen again. So I'm going to learn to make a different decision because I see the pattern now. We can't change something we're not aware of. We can't change something that we don't understand isn't trying to really harm us. It's trying to help. But its help is now contradictory to what we want to accomplish. And this is where you learn to stop that spiral, to find some sort of consistency. And once you are on the other side, right? Once you come back from your vacation travel or whatever it was, for this example that I was using earlier, when I was at my grandparents', I focused on eating protein. I focused on eating vegetables at as many meals as I possibly could. And I focused on moving 30 minutes, at least 20 or 30 minutes every single day to the best of my ability. Those were my 3 or 4 things I was wanting to control in an environment that I don't have much control in. And when I got back home, it's not about overcompensating. It's not making up for all the lost time. It's not about burning off the extra calories. It's cool. I'm back home. All I'm going to worry about is working on getting back to my routine. That's it. I don't have to work harder to burn off the extra stuff. What we do most of the time, matters more than anything else. And people will have such a hard time letting one day just be one day. They let it turn into multiple days, to multiple weeks, to multiple months, to years. And then that they wonder why they have such a hard time climbing it out of a hole, because they went so long. They could have stopped the spiral a lot sooner, but because they weren't aware of it, because they had these unmet expectations or these unfulfillable expectations, they don't want to feel the disappointment, the frustration, or the guilt. So they stop trying. And it doesn't help anything. It doesn't help anybody for you to stop trying. For you to lose out on living a life with your goals, everybody loses. Yeah, you may find it easier on you to just eat whatever you want, but in the back of your mind, if you're always unhappy because you couldn't find a way to give yourself a break, to find some small thing to remind yourself, hey, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to do something, and something can get good enough, and something will get better. Good enough will get better. But you have to allow it. You have to say, I am done going down the same pattern. You have to identify that survival you. You have to identify your tiny Tina, the one that tells you to do something that you don't want to do. You just do it because it's there, because it's available, and you don't think of your actions until you're done doing it. And now you feel shitty that you did it. Now you feel guilty. Now you feel like you crossed a line, right? You have to stop that pattern, and this is how you do it. This is how you establish that consistency, so that no matter what's going on, no matter where you're at in your life, either you're at your goals or you're actively pursuing your goals, you will always feel like you can stay consistent. Same thing with me when I was trying to gain weight, when I was trying to lose weight. Now my goal is to continue, my health goal is to maintain. But now I have this tough relationship with myself, and like the work that I have to do. Like, content generation is hard for me. But if I forget that something is better than nothing, I'm gonna make it a lot harder. If I don't maintain my momentum of at least once a week, well, I'm gonna fall off the wagon for 3 weeks because of the holiday season. And all I gotta do is get back to the best of my ability. So I wanted to film this today and record this today because it was on my mind. I need to do it now. Because if I keep thinking about it, if I keep dwelling on it and I don't do anything about it, it's not going to get better. It's just going to continue to get worse. It's going to continue to spiral out of control. And days will turn to weeks, will turn to months. And now I'm way far behind. In reality, it doesn't have to take that long. All you have to worry about is what's the best I can do in the circumstances that I have. Catch that part of you that wants to keep you stagnant, that wants to keep you here. That survival you doesn't like change. It wants to keep you unhappy because it's what is known. When we can catch that part of ourselves and think through our actions and stop the spiral before it happens and focus on what we can control, and we give ourselves the time that we need to practice this behavior, practice these patterns, then you will find the ability to find consistency no matter what's going on. And then you will ultimately make it easier and make it take a lot less time for you to get to your goals and, more importantly, sustain your goals, because you'll always find a reason to be consistent. You'll like feeling better. You'll hate feeling like crap. You'll hate feeling guilty or frustrated or ashamed. You'll like feeling, oh, I feel accomplished because I did what I could. I enjoyed myself. I allowed foods on my terms. And you'll like feeling that more often, and you'll be much more likely to keep showing up consistently. And when you're more likely to show up consistently, the easier it is for you to see results. So I hope that made sense. It's good to be back. And I needed to get this out of my head. So if you found this helpful, if you found this insightful in any way, if you don't agree with me, that's fine too. Please share this with at least one person. My whole goal is to help you wherever you're at, to the best of my ability. And even if I never speak to you in your entire life, I hope I'm able to make even a small impact on your journey, and help you learn the lessons that took me a long time to learn. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one.